Folks in the United States, essentially headquartered in the United States, and yet somehow, their mailing address is such and such island where they have to pay no taxes. Those are the kinds of egregious concerns that we're trying to deal with. I think we try to take it on a case-by-case basis. And in my CARICOM meeting that I just had, this issue was brought up. There were a number of leaders who expressed concern that maybe they were being unfairly labeled as areas of high financial risk. And what I committed to them is we will examine their complaints and go through in very concrete ways where our concerns are and how our governments can work together. More broadly, I think that if you look at some of the most successful countries in the world, they're actually pretty small countries like Singapore, for example, that on paper look like they have no assets. And yet, if you go to Singapore, it has one of the highest standards of living in the world. What is it that Singapore did that might be replaceable? Well, one of the most important things they did was they made an enormous investment in their people. And if you've got a highly skilled, highly educated workforce, if you've set up rules of law and governance that are transparent and non-corrupt, then you can attract actually a lot of service. Industries to supplement the tourist industry, because people would want to locate in your country. You could envision people wanting to operate and have offices there where you've got a trained workforce. And these days, so many businesses are operating over the internet that if you've got a really Skilled workforce that provides value added, you will attract companies and you'll attract businesses. What deters people from investing in most countries is conflict. Corruption, and a lack of skills or infrastructure. And those countries that are able to address those problems have rule of law and eliminate corruption. Make sure that you are investing in the education of your people, and it's a continuous education. It doesn't just stop at the lower grades, but you give people constant opportunities to upgrade their skills. You have a decent infrastructure, you're going to be able to succeed. That's the recipe, the formula for a 21st century economy. All right. Uh-oh, they're starting to holler at me. Let's see, I haven't gone back here in a while. This gentleman in the blue shirt right here. Question, thanks so much, Mr. President. We know that there's been an increasing military assertiveness of China. Especially in the South China Sea. And it seems that the US has responded to that by pledging to increase its military presence. Because it recognizes the danger that that military increase of China poses to its friends and allies there. Now, China's growing power isn't just military, it's economic. On this side of the world, China has used this soft power. This economic power especially to woo Caribbean governments. My questions are, how does the U.S. view China's influence in its own backyard? especially since you've just talked about the Cold War and alliances? And secondly, what plan does the U.S. have, if any, to contribute more to economic life in the Caribbean to ward off China in terms of foreign direct investment? Thank you very much, Mr. President. President Obama, what's your name? Question, oh, sorry. My name is Newton Harris from the University of Technology, Jamaica. President Obama, fantastic. Well, first of all, let me say that it is U.S. official policy and it is my strong belief that we should welcome China's peaceful rise. What China has done in the last 20, 30 years is remarkable. More people have been lifted out of poverty in a shorter period of time than perhaps any time in human history. And that's good for the world. I mean, we should be more fearful of a poorer. Collapsing China than a China that is participating in the world marketplace and trading and is getting along with its neighbors and part of the international order. Because there are a really large number of Chinese people and we want them to be doing well. So our policy is not to fear China's peaceful rise. Where we get concerned with China is where it is not necessarily abiding by international norms and rules. And is using its size and muscle to force countries into subordinate positions. And that's the concern we have around maritime issues. We think this can be solved diplomatically. but just because the Philippines or Vietnam are not as large as China doesn't mean that they can just be elbowed aside. And, by the way, we don't have a particular view on the territorial disputes, the maritime disputes. Our attitude is simply, let's use the mechanisms that we have in place internationally to resolve them. Now, with respect to Chinese investment in the Caribbean or in the Americas, in the Western Hemisphere, my response is the same one that I gave when I was asked this question in Africa, which is, if China is making investments that are building up infrastructure, or improving education, or helping the people, then we welcome that. We think that's great. The only thing is you got to make sure you look at what strings may be attached. If the investments are made and it's solely to build a road to a mine to extract raw materials that are going to then be immediately going to a port and shipped to China, and if Chinese workers are shipped in to build, the road, and if you don't know exactly what the deal was with the government that led to China getting the contract in those situations. It may not be, in fact, serving the long-term interests of the country. Now, I would say, by the way, I'd say the same thing about the United States. So if we come in with an aid package to your country, and we say we got this great deal, we're going to give you $100 million for such and such, but if when you evaluate the actual benefits, it's you. As companies that are disproportionately benefiting from it, and it's creating a situation where over the long term the United States is making a whole lot of profits but is not leaving behind a sustainable industrial base or ways in which that country can develop, then you have to evaluate that and try to get a better deal. So what I'm saying is not unique to China. I think that's how all countries should be operating. Your government should be transparent, it should be clear about what you're getting. There should be an accounting of how the money flows. There should be a sense that over the long term, Jamaican businesses or somebody from Belize is getting a job, or right? I mean, there should be some sense of how is this benefiting us over the long term. And that's I think the only criteria that we're going to lay out. Now, last thing I'll say because you asked, you kind of posed. Is there like a bidding war going on here for affections? The Chinese are giving us flowers and chocolates. What are you doing for us lately? And so what I would say is this. The United States. I think historically, has been an enormous provider of development aid. Not always, by the way, has it followed the rule I just laid out in terms of whether or not the local recipients are benefiting, but I think we've gotten a lot better at that. And if you look at institutions like the World Bank or other multilateral institutions, we remain the largest contributors by far. So sometimes when you get money from a multilateral institution, you look at who's doing what. If you look at what happens in terms of when Haiti gets decimated, who's raising the money, we tend to look pretty good. It turns out we're doing more than our fair share. And we will continue to do that. We do have some fiscal constraints. And sometimes, I think when I travel to the Americas, to the region, people ask, why don't we have sort of the kinds of Alliance for Progress programs with huge sums of money? Well, part of it is that right after World War II, the United States was so large relative to the rest of the world. Japan was decimated, Europe was decimated. Huge chunks of the world were behind the Iron Curtain. And so it was natural that we gave fivefold or tenfold more than anybody else could do. Well, things have evened out, in case you haven't noticed. We're still, by far, the most powerful nation on earth, and we still do more than everybody else. But we do expect others to step up and do their fair share. But I can guarantee you this, we will always do our fair share. And nowhere is that truer than in the Caribbean and in the Americas. Because you are our neighbors and some of our closest friends. Let's see. It's a young lady's turn. This young lady right here. Right here. Question, welcome, Mr. President. I lived a block away from you in Chicago when I went to the University of Chicago. President Obama, is that right? Question, and my college sweetheart, Sam Cass, was your private chef until very recently.